Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome once again to this course on trade, strategic trade and protectionism, theory and empirics. We are on 10th lecture of this series, especially on covering the second week of our module, where we have been discussing classical theory of international trade and deriving the factors which were associated during the classical phase in explaining international trade. In this context, we discussed couple of things, many examples, many facts which are very realistic one. We also compare with the advanced theories which relax many of the assumptions. So now in order to cover this, we will take the help of many empirical testing which have been done, and you may work out in your home. Now, myself Dr. Pratap C. Mohanty, as a faculty member in Humanities and Social Science Department, IIT Roorkee, will be happy to cover the very systematic aspects of understanding the classical strategies of international trade. Now, the title of this particular one, therefore, maintains empirical testing of comparative advantage theory. So, let us start with our previous lecture, where we left with number of couple of objective test, objective examples. Let us verify what you have understood so far. Now, start with the same which I have started in the previous lecture, comparing Austria and Belgium have their unit labor requirement. How much unit labor requirement they have in producing 1 unit of steel or 1 unit of brooms. Here we are actually explaining cost of productions. So, this is clearly written that unit labor requirement for producing steel and brooms shown in the table at the right. Now, what we have we can define here. Now, as I told you, if it is the unit labor requirement, so therefore, we have to minimize the cost. More we minimize, more advantages the country derives while explaining specialization or even or exchanging goods with another commodity, another countries. Now, look at, so since it is minimize expenditure, so which product is actually less across the two countries, could be produced with a less expenditure. Look at steel. Steel produced with a less expenditure in Austria as compared to Belgium, whereas brooms can be produced at a very cheaper cost, half the cost than that of Austria. So, Belgium has absolute advantage in brooms, whereas Austria has absolute advantage in the production of steel. So, unit production of steel. Now, that is fine, and now simply we have compared the absolute figures and derived this. So, therefore, we will say that yes, there will be trade and it will be beneficial for both the countries. Now, what really happen if we the same example we take it forward for the understanding of comparative cost advantage, we have to take the ratio of cost functions. Now, what happens? Take the ratio, I mean relative cost of production of the same commodity. So, it is 3 upon 8. So, this is 2 upon 1. Now, 3 upon 8 and 2 upon 1. Now, these are not equal for sure, these two are not equal. So, since I mean relatively they are different, There is another window of international trade due to comparative cost advantage as well. Now, these are the preliminary understanding before going to check your objective one. Now, look at Belgium has a comparative, out of these 5 choices, which will be the right option. Belgium has a comparative advantage in brooms. Let us check. Belgium has a comparative advantage in broom. Now, we have talked about the comparative advantage, we need to understand it. So, first of all come to the absolute one. Austria has an absolute advantage in steel, is it right? Austria has an absolute advantage in steel as per the absolute cost advantage, it is right, correct. Now, Belgium has an absolute advantage in broom. Belgium has an absolute advantage in broom, that is also correct. So, both of the options are actually correct. Now, come to the other options. Look at the comparative advantage and let us interpret first. Now, 3 upon 8, 3 by 8, that means relative cost of production of steel as compared to relative cost of production of brooms in Austria. Okay. So, so relative cost of production, this one is much cheaper as compared to 2 upon 1. So, relative cost of production of Austria for steel is much cheaper, whereas for broom Austria is double expensive as compared to Belgium, but this is I mean half the cost, even less than half the cost of production. I mean for steel, especially in Austria, this is less than half the cost of production than that of Belgium. So, therefore, comparatively we can infer to the fact that Austria has comparative advantage of steel production over broom. So, let us check that. So, Belgium has comparative advantage in brooms. Now, we said Austria has comparative advantage in steel. Now, similarly the reverse, Belgium has comparative advantage in broom. If you take the reverse ratio like 1 upon 8 by 8 upon 3. So, 1 upon 8 is half the cost, it is double, more than double. If I just take the different ratio 8 upon 3 and 1 upon 2, I mean Belgium has half the cost than that of the production of Austria so far as brooms are concerned. And similarly for steel, Belgium has double, more than double the expenditure for production of steel as compared to Austria. So, therefore, comparatively Belgium is better in broom and Austria is better in steel. So, let us see, Belgium has comparative advantage in broom, this is correct. Austria has comparative advantage in steel, these two we have already verified, these all are correct. So, therefore, all of the above is right. So, this is the right answer. Okay, I hope it is connected very correctly, and any kind of changes like this in the questions, even if the example itself is absolute, based on absolute cost advantage, but we can differ with the explanation to understand to the fact that it has also interpretation for comparative advantage, cost advantage theory. So, I hope this is clear. Let me proceed to the next example. Okay, yeah. Now, according to another question is here. Now, according to the theory of comparative advantage, which of the following is not a reason why countries trade? Which is not a reason why, as per the comparative advantage, which is not a reason why countries actually trade. Now, reasons are, if there are comparative advantages, then country will certainly trade. So, this is not an answer for sure. Costs are higher in one country than another. So, cost wise trade actually takes place. So, this is a reason. Now, here we are asking which is not a reason. This is not the answer. This is of course a reason, B is also a reason, but they are saying which is not a reason. Prices are lower in one country, this also is a reason, but so see, as per the question this is also not correct. The productivity of the labor differs across countries and accordingly we will specialize. So, this is also a reason, but since we are saying not a reason, so this is not an option. Exports give a country a political advantage over other countries. So, political wise no such discussion have yet been mentioned in classical approach, especially in comparative cost advantage. and that too political advantage and its connection with productivity or with cost differences is not that linearly understood or not that easily understood. And there might be number of interpretation. Political advantage might be good for cost control, might not be good for cost cutting. So, we cannot actually expect what are the interpretations. So, therefore, this is not a reason. So, this is the answer for this question. So, is the answer. All right. And very quickly you can define the answer based on our previous or existing understanding. So, move to the next question. Which of the following statements would a mercantilist not agree with? So, we are now explaining some of the sample questions. We will immediately go to other calculations for international trade statistics for understanding classical theories empirically. Would a mercantilist not agree with? Mercantilist, if you remember, they believe in zero sum trade, they believe in exports, the borders are closed, there are various explanations to it. So, they said imports are desirable. Now, look it carefully, not agree with. They said exports are desirable. So, this is not an answer. So, they never said imports are desirable. Trade is a zero sum activity. Now, which of the following statement would a mercantilist not agree with? Okay, this is they do not agree with because imports are they said exports are desirable. Imports are not desirable in mercantilist theory. So, this is they do not agree. So, this is the answer actually. Why? Because we said not agree. Agree with, they do not agree with the fact that imports are desirable. Now, this is what they agree with, zero sum activity. So, this cannot be an answer because we are saying not agree with. The purpose of trade is to amass revenues from exports they agree. So, this is as per they agree. So, as per the postulations of mercantilist theory, a country can benefit by granting monopoly rights to individuals, that is they agree with. Policies should promote exports, discourage import, they agree with. So, these are agree with. So, but here we are asking not agreeing. So, imports are desirable, which is they did not agree. So, that therefore, A is the right answer. Okay. So, mark carefully, initially I thought it is agree with, but actually the question asked for which where they did not agree with. So, therefore, A is the answer, A is the answer here. Now, let us move to some understanding of terms of trade. Terms of trade we discussed while explaining Px by Py, X and Y stands for exports and imports. If the terms of trade of a nation are 1.5, Px by Py equal to 1.5, which means which means 1 upon 2, which is equal to 3 by 2, all right. So, the relative price of exports is higher than that of the relative price of imports. So, it is 3 as against 2. Exports are higher as compared to the imports they do. And so, what happens if the terms of trade of a nation are 1.5 in two nation world? There are only two nation A and nation B. Here we are saying it is 3 by 2. So, what happens? So, if the relative price here it is 2 for imports and it is 3 for exports. So, what is those of the trade partners, and it will be 2 by 3 for sure, because it will be simply reverse since there are only two countries. Okay, the relative price will be just reverse. So, let us check, it is here 2 by 3. So, the answer is B. Now, let us move to next example, which is bit complicated by the notations. If you read between lines, things are very clear to understand. If with 1 hour of labor time a nation A can produce 3x, now you have to plot it very clearly. Make it like this and make it a further break here to identify the individual country A and B. Now, country A we are saying country B. Country A can produce here what shall unit labor requirement. So, unit labor requirement. So, these are X, these are countries, I mean these are commodities, these are countries, country, this is commodities. Now, this is unit labor, basically we are trying to define the cost. So, nation A can produce either 3x or 3y, nation A can produce 3x. So, this let it be x and this let it be y, nation A produce 3x and 3y, while nation B produce 1x and 3y with the and the labor is the only input. So, with one labor, okay, now the question here is with one labor hour they can produce this. So, this is not cost, this is a productivity Q by L. So, per unit labor how much quantity they produce, it is presented here. Now, given this, how we can derive the answer? Now, simply try to look at X and Y, there are two commodities produced and these are the productivity. Now, for X, country A at maximum can produce 3 units as against country B. So, in absolute sense country has huge advantage, whereas country Y they are same. So, here as well as here, I mean for commodities Y both the countries has equal advantage. So, now there are 3 options. So, through absolute cost advantage we cannot able to define any answer, whereas through comparative cost advantage simply take the terms of trade 3 by 1 unit cost of production of X in country A and unit cost of production of Y, that is 3 by 3. So, unit cost of production is greater than that of production of Y in country A. So, country A is 3 times higher in producing the product of X. So, country A is much specialized in producing this, since we are discussing productivity here, whereas country B it is the ratio 1 only. I mean here the country A and B are indifferent, but for sure country A has huge advantage in producing this. So, comparatively country A has comparative advantage in production of X, that is for sure. Now, in reverse what you do 1 upon 3 and 3 by 3. So, country B is very expensive, I mean very less productive to produce commodity X. So, certainly for international trade country B should choose to produce commodity Y. So, there should be mutual possible trade. So, country A should produce X comparatively, country B should produce Y comparatively. So, there will be possibility of comparative advantage. So, now let us check what is the answer. So, nation A has comparative advantage, comparative disadvantage in commodity X. Nation A has disadvantage, no, this is not an answer. Nation B has comparative disadvantage in Y, this is also not answer. Nation A has comparative advantage in commodity X, right, this is correct. Nation A has a comparative advantage in neither of the product, this is wrong. So, therefore, C is the answer, alright. So, we must proceed further to understand other details. Now, given these questions, mutual beneficial trade, if you try to derive mutual beneficial trade between nation A and B. Now, you go and check, we have already explained in earlier context. Now, in both the cases nation A has higher productivities as compared to other country. So, nation A has leverage in producing both the commodities. So, nation A will start with bargaining. So, minimum of 3y is required for 3x to export. Okay. So, I have given you the hint to think about. Now, 3y is required, answer is C here. So, 3x you can imagine y 9a. So, think about it and try to define it, and if you do not do it we may carry forward this for further discussion in the doubt class. So, let us move on to the realistic example from different literature, and since some of you might prefer for research in a long run, may go for PhD, those who are doing PhD, you may also deep down further. Now, let us say check a catching up model, and it is some of the instrument used to understand the model. So, we have cited here ASEAN Economy Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which have actually grown in the for over 30 years till especially Southeast Asian countries, East Asian miracle we know it, East Asian crisis also we know it, we discussed earlier. So, therefore, our concern here to understand what kind of comparative advantage they had in those periods. So, many experts analyze. So, there are two points of view to explain the ASEAN comparative advantage. So, domestic trade balance perspective and international competitiveness perspective. So, in these two fronts, let us understand the products mapping and tap the comparative advantage. Now, as proposed by this or published here, you can check this site for the details, this is the source. Now, imagination how are presented in a systematic theory are explained how here to talk about the comparative advantage and Ricardian framework. So, we could see in picture A, geese are flying in different shapes as if exports and import baskets are flowing to different countries. We simply plot it in different setups like this, and we can break it like this and categorize it. This is nothing but here, we put it here as here, okay. And we for a systematic presentation we name it as A, B here, then C here, D here. Here, then here we compare, then to here, all right. So, the analytical window is here, we will take the help of their instrument discussed and explain things as systematically possible. So, there are basically two approaches applied by the author. So, they said instead of revealed comparative advantage which we try to discuss, but incomplete it, we will discuss today in another 5-6 minutes in detail. So, revealed comparative advantage I mean not just enough to explain, they said it must be systematically presented developed by Dalum et al. In 1999 paper and Larson 1998 paper as the indicator of comparative advantage. Trade balance index were actually developed by Lafay in 1992 paper as the indicator of export import activities and the direction of trade. Basically RSCA, which we are trying to say revealed systematic comparative advantage, simply a monotonic transformation of the RCA, revealed comparative advantage developed by Balasa 1965 paper. So, what do you mean by revealed comparative advantage? We have already discussed. I said it is simply a ratio, numerator to denominator. Numerator stands for the country, specific country, and denominator stands for the countries other than other country or the world as a whole. So, now Xi denotes the total exports of country I in group of products, the out of the total products, the group of products J, and I stands for the country, specific country I and J. Subscript R refers to R here, subscript R particularly refers to refers to all countries without country I. So, we are here discussing other than the country. Now, Xi stands for the particular country. Subscript N refers to R here, the other countries. N here is written N stands for refers to all groups of products. N stands for all groups of products except group of products J. Okay. So, what happens? This is basically country I. This is basically country I for a particular product J out of total exports of that particular country for a particular industry out of the total exports other than that particular product in the particular country I. So, I is here. So, basically this is country I, other than I, not I, other than I, rather we are discussing here at J, this is basically J. Okay. And here we are sticking to the product called I only, that is ith industry, where it is other than ith industry. So, world as a whole export and its ratio, domestic country and whole and its ratio. Now, ratio of domestic exports out of this total exports other than that particular one out divided by the world exports of that particular product out of the world export of that particular industry J out of the total exports. So, comparatively how things are discussed, we need to think about very systematically as possible. Now, what is RCA then? RCA basically finds a clear comparison of all those things. So, the range if you try to define, it will be varying from, I have already discussed in the earlier lecture, varies from 0 to infinity because it might be 0 starting with 0 exports of the ith industry. So, 0 is possible. It might be the case that 0 in the other country, then the ith country, that might be possibility of 0 here in the denominator. So, 0 is a possibility here. So, therefore, something divided by 0 is infinity. Now, so this is what I have explained here. So, numerator is the share of, I have already discussed this, go through this carefully, you can able to understand in detail. Now, one thing to be noted, RCA takes a value 0 and infinity I have said. So, country A is said to have a revealed comparative advantage if and only if the numerator is greater than that of the denominator. That means, the ith country has higher value of exports as relatively as compared to the international other countries. So, therefore, it is certainly a revealed one, not just comparative advantage on its own. So, we have compared in a very revealed fashion, but we will emphasize differently in my next slide, but try to understand the fact that so advantage and disadvantage can be understood from this index. So, Balas's different paper actually captures different examples, but we are now interested in explaining for the particular country, particular group of countries, that is ASEAN countries, okay, Thailand, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Vietnam, those countries are being explained right now. To get further ideas of for different indices and measurement, WITS, World Intellectual Trade Solution, which I discussed earlier, it is the portal of World Bank, contains so many variety of indices to explain trade, or trade indicators are mentioned. So, if you have interest, you can go through and verify it with this link. Similarly, annual exports and imports data of 10 disaggregated services items from 2013 to 2000 to 2013 were explained in this paper by Nathan and Goswami, especially for Indian context, and they computed that India's competitive advantage for computer and information services are much better. We have advantage. More than 2/3 of the total commercial services exports are from India only. In their paper it was observed. So, the comparative advantage over the rest of the world in different services such as travel, communication, personal, cultural related services as well are better in India as compared to other countries. So, this is highlighted by Nathan and Goswami paper. You can go through this link to find out and publish in Eurasian economic review paper. So, RCA, which we have said only talks about certain limited direction. If you just have a monotonic transformation just by taking a minus in one side, I mean basically a negative monotonic transformation, which I have said, RCA turns out to be turns out to produce values that cannot be compared on both sides of 1. both side of 1. Basically, we said if it is less than 1, then what happens, if it is greater than 1, then what happens. It is very difficult to define. So, therefore, we need to take the help of other indicator called revealed systematic comparative advantage. Now, if you just -1 to +1, if you add it, it will have a range. Go and verify, it will have a range from 1 to 1. So, -1 to 1 where we can able to define it. So, how is it so? If R is greater than 0, I mean the standpoint we are now keeping it, if it is greater than 0, it should be -1 to 1. So, here it is minus is missing, please correct it. So, if it is greater than 1, which implies simply what? It says that country I we are sticking to has comparative advantage in group of products J, okay, but which was not discussed, simply compared in the RCA model. If it is less than 0, that means it is comparative disadvantage in the group of product J. So, this is very important. Now, to check it carefully, we are supposed to discuss with the revealed systematic comparative advantage approach. Similarly, the trade balance index TBI, as Lafayette presented this in a paper 1992, which actually just takes a largely we can say normalization through export minus, and I mean out of total basket, it is basically the total total trade minus the net trade, basically net trade to total trade, gross trade. So, we can find out net importer or net exporter. It takes the value, if you check it very carefully, you can easily understand it takes the value from again -1 to 1. So, now both of the index, if they are taken together, product mapping is possible by using both the indexes, because its ranges are also from -1 to 1. So, those by including two together, two indices together, we can put it into 4 groups, that is A, B, C, D, and presented here. The same example an imagination made by the author, from where we put it into 4 boxes. Now, we are saying look at these first, look at this, and then this and this. Now, it seems as if we are here as if we are net exporters, okay, and here also we are net exporter so far as the the index is concerned, this index TBI TBI index, trade balance index by Lafayette is concerned. Now, I mean from the picture itself it seems here, it seems as if we are net importers, because there is no such clear additions here. So, there is possibility of imports. Now, alternatively, if you check the systematic comparative approach, we can find out for comparative advantage and disadvantage. Look at if the value here, you look at this very clearly, the gap really matters. Now, this is comparative advantage if the value exceeded 0. So, it seems as if we have comparative advantage, whereas look at the magnitude and the differences. Exports is expected to be exceeding, the rate of change is exceeding, actually the distance is exceeding. Here the change is by horizontal very less, and so therefore, this side expected to be greater than 0, and accordingly we said comparative advantage. So, this is positive comparative advantage here, and this is negative. So, and we can define it by comparing these things together and go and check. If you have confusion, we may carry forward in our doubt class. So, this is what I have said accordingly the country actually specialize. So, in the last 1 minute discussion, I will talk about examples we have already made, I will discuss. So, last slide for the discussion of this particular lecture on India and China. We have repeatedly said that China has advantages in manufacturing, where India has many other advantages. So, the bottom line here is that India should not be worried. There are many newspaper articles, and based on those indices, we are confirming to the fact that we must wait and watch and tap the benefits and lead with our details. Now, these are the figures where India and China details are given. You can find out for all items differently and try to understand how India has huge leverage in this context. With this, let me thank you, and you may prepare accordingly, carry forward in the next class. Thank you.